The dust kicked up in orange clouds as Danny Reeves dragged his equipment cart across the cracked ground of Redstone 7. Three suns beat down on the salvage fields where broken ships lay scattered like the bones of metal giants. He wiped sweat from his forehead and squinted at the wreckage ahead. This one looked different. The hull was smooth, almost organic, with curves that seemed too perfect for any human design. Danny had been picking through crash vessels for 5 years on this forgotten mining colony, but he had never seen anything like this. He climbed through a tear in the side, his boots crunching on crystallized debris. The interior was dark and cool. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Danny switched on his headlamp and moved deeper inside. That's when he saw it. The object sat in what might have been a cargo hold, nestled in a cradle of bent metal. It was roughly the size of a large watermelon, perfectly oval, and it pulsed with soft light from within. The surface looked like frosted glass, but when Danny touched it, warmth spread through his gloved fingers. "What are you?" he whispered. The egg hummed. Danny jerked his hand back, but the humming continued, rhythmic and almost musical. He checked his scanner. The readings made no sense. Biological, crystalline, energy signatures that spiked and fell like a heartbeat. His calm crackled. "Danny, you find anything worth credits?" It was Ruth, his salvage partner, calling from her site 2 kilometers away. Danny looked at the egg. Something inside him said this was important. Something said this was not meant to be sold or reported. Nothing much. Checking a few more sections. Don't waste daylight on junk. Admin's been asking about quotas again. Yeah, I know. Danny disconnected and stared at the egg. The smart move was to leave it. Unknown alien objects could be dangerous. But the warmth, the gentle pulse, the way the light seemed to brighten when he came closer, it all felt alive and somehow fragile that he made his decision. Working quickly, he wrapped the egg in insulation foam from his kit and carefully loaded it onto his cart. He covered it with scrap metal and torn panels, hiding it from casual view. The journey back to his workshop took an hour. Danny lived in a converted storage container on the edge of the main colony, a cramped space filled with salvage parts, repair tools, and half-finished projects. He cleared a spot near his workbench and gently set the egg down. For the rest of the day, he went about his normal routine, cataloging scrap and filing reports. But his eyes kept drifting to the egg. It sat there, pulsing, waiting. Night came fast on Redstone 7. Danny heated a ration pack and sat watching the egg while he ate. If you're going to do something, he said to it, now would be the time. As if in response, the pulsing quickened. Cracks appeared on the surface, thin lines of brilliant blue light. Danny set down his food and leaned forward. The egg shattered. Pieces of crystalline shell fell away, and something small and wet uncurled itself from within. Danny's breath caught. It was a creature unlike anything in the colony's xenobiology database. The body was covered in scales that shimmered between silver and blue, catching the light of his workbench lamp. It had 4 legs, each ending in tiny claws. Wings, far too large for its body, were folded against its sides. And the head was almost serpentine, with large eyes that blinked open and stared directly at Danny. The creature chirped. It was a small, questioning sound. "Hey there," Danny said softly. "You okay?" The creature tried to stand, but its legs wobbled. It fell, chirped again, this time with a note of distress. Without thinking, Danny reached out and gently scooped it up. It was warm and fit easily in his hands. The creature looked up at him, eyes wide and reflecting his face. Something in Danny's chest tightened. This little thing was alone, just like he'd been when he first came to this dusty rock with nothing but a second-hand tool kit and desperate hope. "I'll take care of you," he promised. The creature's scales brightened, and it made a soft, trilling sound that might have been contentment. Danny spent the next hour searching his limited net access for any information on species matching this description. Nothing came close. He tried feeding it water. It lapped it eagerly. He tried small bits of his ration pack. It sniffed, then ignored them. Finally, he tried some dried protein strips meant for emergency situations. The creature nibbled cautiously, then ate with more enthusiasm. A knock on his door made Danny jump. He quickly grabbed a cloth and threw it over the creature, who squeaked in protest. Danny? You in there? It was Collins, the colony administrator. Danny opened the door a crack. Yeah. Collins was a thin man with suspicious eyes. Heard you were out at the new wreck site today. Find anything valuable. Some panels. Couple of power cells that might still have charge. Nothing special. Collins studied him. You sure? That wreck had some unusual readings. Corporate might pay good money for exotic tech. Just a busted cargo hauler as far as I could tell. Right. Collins didn't look convinced. Well, remember the colony gets first cut of any major finds. Don't try to smuggle anything off-world. Wouldn't dream of it. After Collins left, Danny locked the door and removed the cloth. The creature shook itself and glared at him with what looked like indignation. Sorry about that, Danny said, but we need to keep you secret. The creature tilted its head, and Danny could swear it understood. He fashioned a nest from old insulation material and set it beside his bunk. The creature circled it a few times, then curled up, wrapping its two large wings around itself. Within minutes, it was asleep, scales dimming to a soft glow. Danny lay in his bunk, watching the gentle rise and fall of the creature's breathing. He had no idea what it was or what he was going to do with it. But looking at that small, peaceful form, he knew one thing for certain, that he would protect it. Whatever it took. 3 weeks changed everything. Danny sat cross-legged on his workshop floor, surrounded by scattered parts and tools. The creature he had named Pearl, for the way her scales caught light like precious gems, was now the size of a medium dog. She crouched nearby, utterly focused on a small mechanical bird Danny had built from salvaged drone parts. Pearl batted at the bird with one claw. It hopped sideways on its wire legs. She pounced, missed, and tumbled across the floor with an indignant squeak. Danny couldn't help but smile. You're getting faster, he said. Pearl righted herself and chirped at him. Over the past weeks, Danny had learned to recognize her different sounds. This one meant she was determined to catch the toy. She stalked the mechanical bird again, moving with more care this time. When she pounced, her claws closed around it. Victory lasted exactly 2 seconds before her grip tightened and the bird crumpled with a sad crunch of breaking metal. Pearl's head drooped. She made a low, mournful sound. It's okay, Danny said, moving closer. Let me see it. She dropped the broken toy into his outstretched hand, then watched as he examined the damage. The wire frame was bent, one leg torn completely off, the small motor crushed. It would take an hour to fix, and this was the 3rd toy Pearl had broken this week. Danny should have been frustrated. Materials cost money he didn't have much of, but when he looked at Pearl's sad eyes, he just felt sympathy. She didn't mean to break things. She was strong and still learning to control that strength. I'll fix it, he promised. I always do. Pearl's scales brightened. She pressed her snout against his arm, making a grateful rumbling sound. Danny worked while she watched. He straightened the wire frame, replaced the broken leg with a piece from an old circuit board, and installed a new motor from his spare parts bin. As he worked, Pearl moved closer, her large eyes tracking every movement of his hands. When he picked up a small wrench to tighten a connection, Pearl made an excited chirp. She had been fascinated by tools lately, often nosing through Danny's kit when he wasn't looking. You want to try? Danny asked. Pearl tilted her head. Danny selected the smallest wrench he owned and held it out. Pearl studied it, then carefully gripped the handle in her claws. Her talons were sharp and precise. She mimicked the twisting motion she had seen Danny make. That's it, Danny encouraged. Just like that. The wrench slipped from her grip and clattered to the floor. Pearl huffed in frustration, but tried again and again. On the 4th attempt, she managed to turn it a full rotation before losing her hold. Danny felt a chill despite the warm workshop air. This wasn't animal behavior. This was intelligence. Real, thinking intelligence. What was Pearl? The question haunted him as he finished repairing the mechanical bird. When he wound it up and set it down, Pearl's mood immediately brightened. She played more gently this time, letting the bird hop around while she followed it with careful steps. Ruth stopped by that evening, as she often did after her salvage runs. Danny heard her footsteps outside, and quickly moved to block the door. "Hey, Ruth, you gonna let me in, or are we talking through metal?" Danny hesitated. Ruth was his closest friend on Redstone 7, but he had been avoiding her questions about his strange behavior. Finally, he stepped aside. Ruth entered and froze. Pearl sat in the middle of the workshop, the mechanical bird clutched gently in her claws. She looked at Ruth and made a curious chirping sound. "Danny," Ruth said slowly. "What is that?" "Her name is Pearl." "That's not an answer. I don't have a better one. I found her egg in that wreck. She hatched. She's been growing fast." Ruth walked in a slow circle around Pearl, who watched her with interest but no fear. "This is insane. You know that, right? You're keeping some kind of alien creature in your workshop. What if it's dangerous?" "She's not dangerous. She's just a baby." "A baby what?" Ruth pointed at Pearl's claws. "Those could tear through hull plating. And are those wing buds? Is she going to fly?" Pearl, sensing tension in Ruth's voice, moved closer to Danny and pressed against his leg. The protective gesture made something in Danny's chest warm. "She trusts me," Danny said. "I can't just abandon her." Ruth rubbed her face. "You're spending all your earnings on materials to build her toys. You're barely eating. People are starting to notice you acting weird. Let them notice." "Danny, be serious. What happens when she gets bigger? What happens when someone like Collins finds out? He'll report this so fast your head will spin, and then corporate will come take her, or worse." Danny knew she was right. He had been avoiding thinking about the future, focusing only on each day with Pearl. But Pearl was growing. Soon she would be too large to hide. "I'll figure something out," he said. Ruth sighed. "You're stubborn. You know that?" She knelt down and offered her hand to Pearl. "Hey there, little one." Pearl sniffed Ruth's fingers, then gently bumped her snout against Ruth's palm. Ruth's expression softened. "Okay, she is pretty cute," Ruth admitted. "But cute won't protect you if the wrong people find out." After Ruth left, Danny sat with Pearl and thought about the problem. Pearl brought him the broken mechanical bird again. She had accidentally crushed it during play. Danny took it without complaint and began repairs. Pearl settled beside him, watching intently. Danny realized she wasn't just watching for entertainment. She was learning. Every time he fixed something, she paid attention to how he did it, the tools he used, the order of steps. An idea formed. If Pearl was this intelligent, maybe he could teach her more than just restraint. Maybe he could teach her skills. Over the next week, Danny built more complex toys. A puzzle box with sliding panels that had to be moved in sequence to open. A mobile made for navigation sensors that spun and chimed when touched properly. A small mechanical companion that would follow Pearl around the workshop. Pearl loved all of them. But more importantly, she studied them. When the puzzle box broke from rough handling, Danny found Pearl trying to fix it herself. She had pushed 2 panels back into alignment with her snout before giving up and bringing it to him. Danny's heart nearly burst with pride. He started showing her how things worked, how gears meshed, how circuits completed, how balance and weight distribution mattered in mobile construction. Pearl absorbed it all with fierce concentration. One evening, Danny fell asleep at his workbench while repairing a particularly complicated toy. He woke hours later to find Pearl sitting beside him, the completed toy in front of her. She had finished the repair herself. The work was crude, scratches where her claws had slipped, connections that were adequate but not elegant. But worked. When Danny activated it, the toy whirred to life exactly as designed. "Pearl," he whispered, "you did this." She chirped proudly and nuzzled his hand. Danny pulled her into a hug, carefully avoiding her growing spines. "You're amazing. You know that." Pearl's scales glowed brighter than he had ever seen them, and in that moment, Danny understood something fundamental. Pearl wasn't just smart for an animal. She might be as intelligent as he was, maybe more so. She was learning at an incredible rate. Whatever she was, whoever her kind were, Pearl was special. And Danny would make sure she had every chance to grow into whatever she was meant to become, even if he had to fix 1,000 broken toys along the way. The ship descended through Redstone 7's dusty atmosphere like a predator spotting prey. Danny watched from his workshop window, a cold not forming in his stomach. The vessel was sleek and corporate, bearing the logo of GeneTech Solutions, a company known for acquiring rare biological specimens. Pearl, now the size of a small horse, pressed against his side. She had grown so much in 2 months that Danny had been forced to move them both to an abandoned mining cave outside the colony. The workshop still served as his public workspace, but Pearl's real home was now in the deep tunnels. "We knew this would happen eventually," Danny muttered. Pearl made a worried sound, her scales shifting to darker shades. Danny's calm buzzed. Ruth's voice came through, tight with urgency. "Danny, get to the colony center. Now, there's a biosurvey team here asking questions." 20 minutes later, Danny stood in the crowded community hall. A woman in crisp corporate attire addressed the assembled colonists. Her name badge read Dr. Voss, lead researcher. "We have confirmed reports of a juvenile dracomorph on this world," Dr. Voss announced. "This species is extremely rare and extremely valuable. Anyone providing information leading to its recovery will receive a substantial reward." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Credits were scarce on Redstone 7. A substantial reward could change lives. Dr. Voss continued. "Dracomorphs are dangerous apex predators. If anyone has encountered one, they should report it immediately for their own safety." Danny kept his face neutral, but his mind raced. Dracomorph. So that's what Pearl was. He stored the name away for later research. "What does this creature look like?" someone called out to Doctor. Voss activated a hologram. The image showed a creature similar to Pearl, but larger, with the same distinctive scales and wing structure. Juveniles are typically between 2 and 4 meters in length at this stage. They have considerable strength and can generate intense heat. Danny's hands clenched. The description fit Pearl perfectly. After the meeting, Collins cornered him outside. "Reeves, you've been spending a lot of time in the old mine systems. Seen anything unusual? Just looking for salvage in new places." "Right." Collins studied him. "Funny thing, several people mentioned you've been buying a lot of materials lately. Building materials, food supplements, almost like you're caring for something." "My business is my business. Not when there's a reward involved." Collins leaned closer. "I'm watching you, Reeves. If you're hiding that creature, I'll find out." Danny returned to the caves as quickly as he dared. Pearl greeted him with anxious chirps. She had heard the ship land. She knew something was wrong. "It's okay," Danny soothed, though his heart hammered. "We just need to be more careful." He had transformed one of the deeper caves into a living space for Pearl. Bioluminescent fungi he had cultivated provided soft light. Pearl's toys were arranged carefully along one wall. The mechanical bird, the puzzle box, the spinning mobile, and dozens of others Danny had built or repaired. Each one represented hours of work and precious materials. Pearl brought him something she had found in the tunnels, a cluster of edible mushrooms. She had started doing this recently, sharing food with him the way he shared his rations with her. It was a gesture of care that always touched him. "Thanks, girl," he said, accepting them. They spent the evening as they usually did. Danny worked on a new project, a complex music box that would play tunes while projecting colored lights. Pearl watched intently, occasionally passing him tools when he reached for them. She had learned which tool he needed for each task. 3 days passed. Danny tried to maintain his normal routine, but the biosurvey team was searching systematically. They had scanners that could detect biological signatures through rock and metal. On the 4th day, Ruth came to find him in the caves. She looked frightened. "They've been questioning everyone about you," she said. "I try not to say anything, but Dr. Voss has ways of making people talk. She knows you've been acting strange. She knows about the caves." Danny felt his world tilting. "How long do I have?" "They're organizing a search party for tomorrow morning." "Danny, you need to decide what you're going to do." Pearl emerged from the shadows, and Ruth gasped. "She's gotten huge." "She's still growing," Danny said. "Ruth, I can't let them take her. She's not just some specimen. She's smart. She understands things. She has feelings." "I know." Ruth approached Pearl carefully, offering her hand. Pearl sniffed it, recognizing Ruth from previous visits. "But what choice do you have? They'll find her. And when they do, they'll take her anyway. At least if you cooperate, you might get the reward money." I don't want their money. I want Pearl to be safe. That night, Danny couldn't sleep. He sat with Pearl, watching her play with the music box. She had figured out how to wind it herself, and she would sit for hours listening to the melody and watching the lights dance. The music box was Danny's finest work. Every component fit perfectly. The tune was one he remembered from childhood, before his parents died, and he ended up drifting from world to world. Somehow, building it for Pearl had helped heal something in him. Pearl noticed his distress. She abandoned the music box and curled around him, her warmth enveloping him like a protective blanket. She made soft, comforting sounds. "I'm supposed to be taking care of you," Danny said, his voice breaking. Not the other way around. But Pearl just held him tighter. Morning came too soon. Danny heard voices echoing through the cave system. The search party had arrived. They had tracking equipment, lights, weapons. Pearl heard them too. Her scales darkened, and a low growl rumbled in her chest. "No," Danny said firmly. "Don't fight them. You could get hurt." Pearl looked at him with those intelligent eyes, and Danny saw fear there. Not fear of the hunters, but fear of losing him. The voices grew closer. Danny made a decision. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "There are deeper tunnels. I've seen them, but never explored them. Go there. Hide. No matter what happens, don't come out until it's safe." Pearl shook her head, a gesture she had learned from watching him. "Please," Danny begged. "Trust me. I'll handle this." For a long moment, Pearl didn't move. Then she gently picked up the music box in her jaws and looked at Danny one more time. Her scales flickered with emotion, fear, love, trust. Then she turned and ran deeper into the darkness. Danny stood alone as lights appeared at the cave entrance. Dr. Voss entered first, flanked by armed guards. She scanned the area, noting the nest, the toys, the evidence of habitation. "Mr. Reeves," she said, "where is the Dracomorph?" "Safe," Danny replied. "Somewhere you won't find her." Dr. Voss sighed. "You don't understand what you're protecting. Dracomorphs aren't pets. They're sentient beings from one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. That creature is royalty." Danny's blood ran cold. "What?" "The ship that crashed was a royal transport. That hatchling is a member of the Cauldrith ruling family. We're not here to harm her. We're here to save her and save you." Dr. Voss stepped closer. "A Cauldrith warship is en route to this world. They've detected her biosignature. When they arrive in less than 2 days and find humans have been keeping one of their royals, they will destroy this entire colony as punishment." The cave seemed to spin around Danny. "You're lying. I wish I was. You have 2 choices. Surrender the hatchling to us. We have a facility that can protect her and negotiate with the Cauldrith. Or wait for the warship and watch everyone here die." Danny looked at the music box Pearl had dropped in her haste to flee. His mind raced through impossible scenarios, desperate plans. Danny paced the cave, his mind churning. 2 days. He had 2 days before a warship arrived and potentially killed everyone on Redstone 7. The weight of hundreds of lives pressed down on him. Doctor Voss watched him with calculating patience. "Every hour you delay puts more people at risk." "You said she's royalty," Danny said. "That she's sentient. If that's true, then shouldn't she get a choice in what happens to her? She's a juvenile, too young to understand the politics involved. She's smart enough to use tools, smart enough to fix broken things, smart enough to know who she can trust." Danny stopped pacing and faced Dr. Voss directly. "I need proof. Show me evidence that a warship is really coming." Dr. Voss nodded to one of her assistants, who activated a portable display. Star charts appeared, showing a vessel's trajectory. The ship's signature matched known Cauldrith Empire patterns, and its destination was unmistakably Redstone 7. Arrival estimate, 38 hours. The assistant reported that Danny's stomach dropped. It was real. All of it was real. "There's more you should know," Dr. Voss said, her tone softening slightly. "Dracomorphs bond with those who care for them during their first months of life. The bond is psychological and partially empathic. She won't want to leave you, and forcing separation could traumatize her. Then what do you suggest? Come with her to our facility. Help ease the transition. Once the Cauldrith arrive, you can explain what happened. that you saved her, protected her. It might be enough to avoid retaliation. Danny thought of Pearl hiding in the deep tunnels, alone and afraid, still clutching the music box. He thought of Ruth and the other colonists who would die if he made the wrong choice. "I need time," he said. "Let me talk to her. Let me explain." Dr. Voss checked her chrono. "You have until dawn tomorrow. After that, we extract her by force if necessary." "I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, but too many lives are at stake." After they left, Danny sat in the empty cave surrounded by Pearl's toys. Each one told a story. The mechanical bird she had broken and watched him fix a dozen times. The puzzle box that taught her patience. The mobile that still spun gently in the air currents. Ruth found him there an hour later. "I heard," she said quietly. "The whole colony is talking. Some people want to hunt Pearl down themselves and hand her over. Others are angry you brought this danger to us. I know. For what it's worth, I don't blame you. You couldn't have known." Ruth sat beside him. "But Danny, what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I just know I can't let her be taken by force. She deserves better than that." Danny gathered supplies and headed into the deep tunnels. He called Pearl's name, his voice echoing off stone walls. For long minutes, there was only silence. Then he heard a familiar chirp, hesitant and questioning. Pearl emerged from a side passage, the music box still clutched carefully in her jaws. When she saw Danny, her scales brightened and she rushed forward. But she stopped just short of bowling him over, having finally learned to control her strength. Danny hugged her neck. "I'm so sorry, girl. I brought you into a terrible situation." Pearl made a worried sound. She could sense his distress. "I need to tell you some things," Danny said, "and I need you to really listen." He explained everything as simply as he could. That she was a dracomorph, that her people were powerful and important, that a ship was coming to find her, that the humans of this colony were in danger because of her presence. That Pearl's scales darkened with each revelation. When Danny finished, she made a low, mournful sound and pressed the music box into his hands. "I know you don't want to leave," Danny said. "I don't want you to leave either. But I can't let people die, and I can't keep you hidden forever." He met her eyes. "You're meant for bigger things than hiding in caves. You're meant to be with your own kind." Pearl shook her head violently, the same gesture of refusal she had learned from him. "Please," Danny said, "I need you to trust me one more time." For the next day and a half, Danny did something he had never done before. Instead of just fixing Pearl's toys, he taught her why they mattered, why he had built each one, what each represented. The mechanical bird was about patience, about trying again after failure. The puzzle box was about thinking through problems step by step. The mobile was about balance and beauty, about how something could be valuable just for bringing joy. And the music box was about memory and connection, about how something could carry meaning beyond its function. Pearl listened to every word, her eyes never leaving his face. "You're going to meet your people," Danny said, "and they're going to expect things from you. They're going to see you as royalty. But I need you to remember that being powerful doesn't mean being cruel. Being important doesn't mean forgetting kindness." He pulled out a small device he had spent the last hours building. It was a hovering drone, painted to match Pearl's scales. He had programmed it with teaching modules, repair instructions, and every bit of knowledge he could compress into its memory. "This is my final gift to you," Danny said. "A companion, a teacher, a reminder." He activated it, and the drone hummed to life, circling Pearl with gentle curiosity. "It can't replace me, but it carries everything I wanted to teach you." Pearl touched the drone gently with one claw. Then she turned to Danny and did something that stopped his heart. She spoke. The word was rough, her vocal structure not designed for human language, but it was unmistakable. "Danny, stay." Tears blurred Danny's vision. "I can't, but I promise you won't be alone, and I promise I'll be okay." Pearl made a sound that broke Danny's heart, a cry of protest and pain. She understood loss. She understood what was happening. Danny held her until dawn came. When Dr. Voss and her team arrived, Pearl didn't fight. She walked beside Danny, her head low, the music box and drone following. They were halfway to Dr. Voss's ship when the sky darkened. A massive vessel descended through the clouds, a ship that made the corporate transport look like a toy. Its hull was black and seemed to absorb light. Patterns glowed across its surface like living circuits. The Caldrith warship had arrived early, a shuttle detached, and landed with impossible grace. The ramp lowered, and beings emerged that made Danny's breath catch. They were dracomorphs, but fully grown. Massive creatures 3 times Pearl's size, with scales that shimmered like polished metal and eyes that burned with intelligence and power. The lead dracomorph approached on 4 legs, wings folded against its back. When it spoke, its voice resonated in Danny's chest. "I am Magistrate Thyrol. I have come for the royal hatchling." Those burning eyes fixed on Danny. "And I have come to judge those who kept her from her people." Pearl stepped between Thyrol and Danny. She was so much smaller, barely reaching the magistrate's shoulder, but she stood firm. And then she spoke, not in human words, but in the language of her own kind, a complex series of sounds and harmonics that Danny couldn't begin to understand. Thyrol's expression shifted to surprise. The magistrate looked at Danny with new intensity. "What have you done to her?" Danny faced the massive magistrate with his heart hammering, but he refused to show fear. If these were his last moments, he would face them standing tall. "I didn't do anything to her," Danny said. "I took care of her." Thyrol's scales rippled with patterns Danny couldn't interpret. The hatchling speaks of toys, of repairs, of lessons in patience and craftsmanship. "She claims you're a clutch friend. I don't know what that means." "It is a title," Thyrol said slowly, "reserved for those outside our kind who have earned the protection of a royal house through acts of profound care. It has not been bestowed in 3 generations." Pearl chirped and gestured with her snout toward the cave. She wanted Thyrol to see something. The magistrate followed Pearl into the caves, with Danny and Dr. Voss trailing behind. When they reached the living space Danny had created, Thyrol stopped. The massive dracomorph examined everything with meticulous attention. The nest, the arranged toys, the careful organization. Pearl brought forward the mechanical bird. She demonstrated winding it, watching it hop, catching it gently. Then she brought the puzzle box and worked through its sequence with practiced ease. Finally, she activated the music box. As the melody played and lights danced across the cave walls, Pearl settled beside Danny. She looked up at Thyrol and spoke again in her own language. Thyrol listened, then responded. The conversation continued for several minutes while Danny stood anxiously. He wished desperately that he could understand what Pearl was saying. Finally, Thyrol turned to him. "She says you found her when she was afraid and alone, that you fed her when she was hungry, that when she broke things with her strength, you did not punish or abandon her. You fixed them. Again and again, you fixed them. She says you taught her that mistakes can be repaired. That patience has value. That creating brings more joy than destroying." Danny's throat tightened. "She's a good student. She says you gave her gifts not to buy her loyalty, but to bring her happiness. That you spent resources you could barely spare to build her toys. That you treated her not as a possession or a burden, but as someone worthy of time and care." Thyrol's eyes seemed to bore into Danny's soul. "She says you never asked for anything in return. I didn't need anything in return. Taking care of her was enough." Thyrol made a sound that might have been approval. "The hatchling you call Pearl is properly named Magistrate Designate Yari's Val Caldrith, 3rd heir to the solar throne of the Western Reaches. Her transport was attacked by pirates. We believed her lost. The enormity of it crashed over Danny. He had been raising royalty, actual royalty from an empire that spanned star systems. I didn't know," Danny said. "I just knew she needed help. Ignorance of her status makes your actions more remarkable, not less." Thyrol gestured to the toys. "These objects are simple, yet they carry profound lessons. The care in their construction speaks of respect. The patience in repeated repairs speaks of dedication." The magistrate looked at Danny. "You could have sold her to the corporation for wealth. You could have abandoned her when she grew too large. You didn't either. Why?" Danny thought about how to explain it. "Where I come from, you take care of the people who matter. Pearl mattered. She still matters." Thyrol was quiet for a long moment. Then the magistrate said something that changed everything. "There will be no punishment for this colony. Instead, I declare you Danny Reeves, to be clutch friend to House Caldrith. You and your people are under our protection. Gasps came from Dr. Voss and her team, who had been listening from the cave entrance. However, Thyrol continued, Yaris must return with me. She has duties to her house and her people. She must be educated in our ways and prepared for her role. Pearl made a distressed sound and pressed against Danny. I know, Danny told her softly, but they're right. You need to be with your own kind. You need to learn who you really are. Pearl shook her head, tears, actual tears, forming in her large eyes. Danny knelt and took her head in his hands. Listen to me. You are meant for amazing things. You're going to grow up to be powerful and important. Your people need you. But that doesn't mean you forget where you came from or what you learned. He picked up each toy, explaining once more what it represented. The mechanical bird, persistence. The puzzle box, patience. The mobile, balance. The music box, memory. When you face hard decisions, Danny said, remember these lessons. When people expect you to be harsh because you're powerful, remember that you can choose kindness instead. When things break, and things will break, remember that they can be fixed. Pearl was crying openly now, making heartbroken sounds. You're going to do great things, Danny said, his own voice breaking. And I'm going to be so proud of you. Thyrol watched this exchange with an expression Danny couldn't read. Then the magistrate said, there is precedent for clutch friends to travel with young royals during education. If you wish, Danny Reeves, you may accompany Yaris to our teaching worlds. Hope flared in Danny's chest, then died. I can't. This colony is my home. These people depend on the salvage work. Ruth and the others need someone who understands the equipment. He looked at Pearl. I have to stay. Pearl made a sound of pure anguish. But, Danny said quickly, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right here. And when you're done with your training, when you've learned everything you need to learn, you can come visit. I'll keep building things. I'll keep fixing things. And I'll always have a new toy ready for you. Thyrol stepped forward. I will make you an offer, Danny Reeves. House Caldrith will establish a trade outpost on this world. We will bring resources, technology, and opportunity. This colony will prosper under our protection. In exchange, you will serve as liaison between our peoples. You will help us understand human customs as you helped Yaris understand care and patience. Danny stared. You would do that? For Pearl. For Yaris, Thyrol corrected. And for you, who showed her what it means to nurture rather than dominate. We Dracomorphs are powerful, but we sometimes forget gentleness. You reminded us through your actions. Ruth pushed forward from the crowd. Danny, that would save the colony. We could actually thrive instead of just surviving. Danny looked at Pearl. What do you think, girl? Would that be okay? Pearl chirped, then carefully picked up the music box. She brought it to Thyrol and set it down at the magistrate's feet. Then she spoke in her language. She wishes to keep this, Thyrol translated. As a reminder of home. It's yours, Danny said. It was always yours. Thyrol examined the music box closely, studying its construction and mechanism. You built this with your own hands? Yes. The craftsmanship is excellent. The concept is elegant. Thyrol looked at Danny with new respect. Among my people, the creation of beauty is considered as valuable as the exercise of power. You have talent, Danny Reeves. Over the next hours, details were arranged. The colony would receive immediate aid. Danny would work with Caldrith representatives to establish trade. And Pearl, Yaris, would leave for training but would return when her education allowed as the Caldrith shuttle prepared for departure. Danny spent final moments with Pearl. He gave her the companion drone, fully activated and programmed. This will help you remember, he said, and it will keep teaching you things even when I'm not there. Pearl nuzzled him gently, having learned perfect control of her strength. She spoke in halting human words, come back. You're the one leaving, Danny said with a sad smile. But yes, I'll be here when you come back. I promise. Pearl boarded the shuttle, the music box clutched carefully in her claws, the drone hovering beside her. She looked back at Danny one last time before the ramp closed. Danny stood with the colonists and watched the Caldrith ship rise into the sky. Ruth put a hand on his shoulder. You did good, she said. I just fixed some toys, Danny replied, wiping his eyes. You did more than that. You changed everything. As the ship disappeared into the stars, Danny thought about the future, about a colony that would prosper instead of struggle, about a little dragon who would grow into a powerful leader but hopefully never forget the lessons learned in a cave. 7 years passed like water through fingers. Danny stood in his workshop, no longer a converted storage container, but a proper facility with clean floors, quality tools, and actual climate control. The transformation of Redstone 7 had been remarkable. What was once a struggling salvage colony was now a thriving trade hub between human space and the Caldrith Empire. But success hadn't changed Danny's essential work. He still built things. He still fixed things. Though now he created with better materials and for a wider audience, that on his workbench sat his latest project, a puzzle box more complex than any he had built before. It required 12 specific moves in the correct sequence to open, and inside waited a small crystal that would glow with warm light when activated. He had spent 3 months on it. Ruth entered, looking amused. You know, she probably won't have time to solve it, right? From what the messages say, she's incredibly busy. She'll make time, Danny said with confidence. The messages from Pearl, from Magistrate-Designate Yaris, came regularly, though less frequently than in early years. She told him about her training, her studies, her growing responsibilities. She had learned combat and diplomacy, strategy, and history. She was becoming exactly what her people needed, but she always asked about the toys. Always wanted to know what Danny was building. The Caldrith delegation confirmed her ship will arrive tomorrow, Ruth said. The whole colony is preparing. We've never had someone of her rank visit before. She's still Pearl to me, Danny said, though his stomach fluttered with nerves. Would she remember him? Would she have changed too much? That night, Danny barely slept. He arranged and rearranged his workshop, making sure everything was perfect. The mechanical bird sat on a shelf, repaired and polished. The mobile hung from the ceiling, gently spinning, and the puzzle box waited on the workbench. Morning came with unusual bustle. The entire colony turned out to greet their visitor. A massive Caldrith ship descended, dwarfing even the trading vessels that regularly docked. It settled in a designated landing area with practiced grace. The ramp lowered. An honor guard emerged first, elite dracomorph warriors whose scales gleamed like polished armor. Then came advisors and attendants, each moving with precise dignity. Finally, she appeared that Danny's breath caught. Pearl had grown magnificent. She was easily 4 times the size she had been as a juvenile, her scales shimmering with colors that shifted in the sunlight. Her wings, once too large for her body, now fit perfectly. She wore minimal ornamentation, a few pieces of ceremonial metalwork, but carried herself with undeniable authority. For a moment, Danny wondered if she would even recognize him. He was older now, graying at the temples, his hands marked with years of tool work. That Pearl's eyes scanned the crowd. Then they found him. Her scales brightened instantly, and she made a sound, a chirp like the one she used to make as a hatchling. The dignified bearing vanished as she rushed forward, her attendants scrambling to keep up. Danny! Her human speech was perfect now, her voice rich and clear. Danny laughed. He couldn't help it, and opened his arms. Pearl managed to stop herself from bowling him over, but she pressed her snout against his chest with obvious joy. Hey, Pearl, he said, hugging her as much as he could manage. You got big. You got old, she replied, pulling back to examine him. Gray hairs. Are you well? Are you eating enough? The reports say you work too hard. I'm Fine. Just time doing what time does. Danny smiled. Look at you. A real magistrate now. Magistrate-designate, she corrected, but her eyes sparkled with pleasure. I have 3 more trials to complete, but Thyrol says I am progressing well. The formalities took hours. Pearl met with the colony leadership, inspected the trade facilities, and discussed expansion plans. She was professional and commanding, every bit the ruler she was meant to become. But Danny caught her glancing his way throughout, as if making sure he was still there. Finally, the official duties concluded. Pearl dismissed her attendants and walked with Danny to his workshop. When she entered, she froze. "You kept them," she whispered. "Of course I kept them. They're yours." Pearl moved through the space like it was a sacred shrine. She touched the mechanical bird gently, wound it up, watched it hop with the same fascination she had shown years ago. She worked through the old puzzle box, her claws moving with practiced precision. She activated the mobile and watched it spin. "I have these exact objects in my quarters on the teaching world," she said. "The originals you gave me. I study them when decisions are difficult. They remind me of what matters. And what's that? That strength without patience is just violence. That power without care is just tyranny." Pearl turned to face him. "That fixing things is better than breaking them, even when breaking would be easier." Danny felt warmth spread through his chest. "You remembered. I remember everything. Every lesson. Every repair. Every moment you chose kindness when you could have chosen convenience." Pearl noticed a new puzzle box on the workbench. "Is that for me? If you want it. It's harder than the others. Took me a while to get it right." Pearl examined it with intense focus. She began working through the mechanism, testing moves, thinking through sequences. Danny watched, amazed at how her problem-solving skills had developed. After 20 minutes, she made the final move and the box opened. The crystal inside glowed to life. "Beautiful," she said softly. "You still make the most wonderful toys." "They're not just toys anymore," Danny admitted. "I've been teaching others. Human kids, mostly, but some young Caldrith too. Showing them how to build things, fix things. The patience it takes. The care." Pearl's eyes widened. "You are teaching our young. A few. The ones who visit with trading families. Is that okay?" "Okay. Danny, it is perfect." Pearl's scales shimmered with emotion. "Do you know what I am about to tell you?" "No idea." "Magistrate Thyrol is retiring. The trials I mentioned, they are to determine the next magistrate of the Western Reaches. I am the leading candidate." Danny's jaw dropped. "Pearl, that's incredible. You'd be in charge of hundreds of worlds." "If I am chosen, yes." She looked at him seriously. "And if I am chosen, I want to make changes. The Empire has been rigid, focused only on strength and tradition. But I have seen another way. I have seen what happens when someone chooses to nurture instead of dominate, to teach instead of command, to fix instead of discard. You're talking about creating a whole new approach to leadership. I'm talking about remembering what a human salvage worker taught me in a cave." Pearl moved closer. "But I cannot do it alone. I will need advisors who understand both human and Caldrith ways. I will need someone who can teach others what you taught me." Danny's heart raced. "Pearl, I'm not qualified for interstellar politics. You are qualified to teach patience, to show that care matters, to demonstrate that even broken things have value if someone is willing to fix them." She paused. "I'm not asking you to leave your home. I am asking if you would be willing to establish a school here. A place where young beings, human and Caldrith, can learn the lessons you taught me. I will provide resources. You provide wisdom." Danny looked around his workshop at the tools and projects that filled his life. Then he looked at Pearl, at the magnificent being she had become, and saw the earnest hatchling she had been. "On one condition," he said. "Name it. You visit when you can, even when you're magistrate, even when you're busy ruling an empire. You come back and tell me how things are going." Pearl's scales brightened until she almost glowed. "I promise. No matter how far I travel or how much responsibility I carry, I will always come home to the place where someone taught me that toys are worth fixing and creatures are worth caring for." She carefully picked up the old music box, the same one she had taken years ago, now showing its age. "This still works. I have maintained it perfectly, but perhaps you could show me how to repair the mechanism myself? I never learned that lesson." Danny smiled. "I'd be happy to. We got time." They spent the rest of the day in the workshop, teacher and student once more. Danny showed Pearl the intricate workings of the music box, explaining each component. Pearl listened with the same intense focus she had shown as a hatchling, asking questions, making sure she understood. As the sun set and the music box played its familiar melody, Pearl said quietly, "Thank you, Danny, for everything, for seeing something worth saving in a lost egg, for for having the patience to fix my broken toys 1,000 times, for teaching me that power is not as important as compassion. You figured that out yourself? Danny said. I just gave you the space to learn. Then thank you for the space, for the time, for the care. Pearl touched the music box gently. When I am magistrate, this will sit in my chambers. A reminder that the greatest leaders are those who know how to fix broken things, whether those things are toys, or trust, or entire civilizations. Danny watched the lights dance across the workshop walls and thought about the strange path his life had taken, from a struggling salvage worker to the teacher of a future magistrate, from someone who fixed broken ships to someone who helped shape the values of an empire. All because he chose to care for a frightened hatchling instead of seeking profit. You're going to be a great leader, he told Pearl. The kind who remembers that everyone deserves patience and second chances. I will try, Pearl promised. And when I fail, when I break things with my power, just like I broke toys with my strength, I will remember that mistakes can be fixed. That patience has value. That caring costs nothing but means everything. She looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and love. I will remember because you taught me, and I will teach others because you showed me how. The music box played on, carrying its simple melody into the night, a reminder that the smallest acts of kindness can echo across stars and shape the future of empires.